So, Byron, in any normal country, right, that really cares about its citizens, one would think that the government of that particular country, if it's dealing with any issues, would try to bring in the best people around the world to solve that particular issues. And in South Africa, we are, you know, considering a lot of problems. The main one is water. Our infrastructure's gone to shit. There's a lot of water leaks. There's day zero in Nelson Mandela Bay or Wiki or whatever the hell they call it. So one would hope that people from around the world will come in and say, listen, here's the best way to solve that crisis. And people have come from across the world, notably one country called Israel. And Israel is a unique country because it's a desert, arid country, but 90% of its water is recycled water. So they are like the world experts in water. And any normal country or government, like a South African government, would say to themselves, we need to solve these issues of day zero. Let's bring in the Israelis. So the Israelis have taken the first shot across the bow, so to speak, and they are in South Africa as we speak because they want to prevent day zero and to solve day zero for a variety of municipalities in South Africa. So the Jewish National Fund of South Africa has funded this delegation to come to South Africa and speak with various municipal officers and politicians to solve the water crisis. However, there is one issue at hand here. The ANC thinks Israel is akin to apartheid, and therefore we know for a fact that, well, the ANC is not happy with this whatsoever. So what are your views on Israel trying to solve a crisis for us, and perhaps we not allowing them to do so?
Okay, I think we need to take a little step back and first explain to everybody what Israel are suggesting. Okay, so Israel basically says that because it's an arid country, it has a method of drawing water from the air. So they use the air, they do some kind of crazy wizardry and they turn it into water, drinkable water. The second thing is that they're world masters in wastewater. So if you look at South Africa, it's estimated that 37% of urban water is lost due to leaks, but there's also a huge lack of drinkable water, which basically means water that isn't of should we say a sanitary nature. And if you recall, probably around 6 months ago, we did a video where in Nelson Mandela Bay, the ANC lady there told people to put jick in their water to make it drinkable. And we were like, how much jick? We actually got loads of flack to that video because loads of people were like, well, you can do that. And it does make it drinkable. And it's like, yeah, we're not disputing that. But you know, some people are stupid. They won't just be like, oh, teaspoon. They'll be like, and then obviously that's catastrophic failure, organ failure. So this is what Israel's saying. They're saying that they can help with recycling of water. They're saying they can also help create water from the air. And yes, South Africa is a water scarce country. So there are countries around the world that are water scarce. Australia is one of them. So Australia, and we've discussed this before in other podcasts, have a rule that every house should be fitted with a water tank because that water tank helps to get rainwater, which rainwater you can use in the house, and you can then flood it back into the system. Once it goes in the system, it can be recycled and put back out as drinking water. So there is logic to it, but South Africa doesn't have that infrastructure in place. So obviously the Jews have come up with this idea that if they come to South Africa, there's a need, they can fulfill it. But as you very eloquently put it, the ANC doesn't like the Jewish state because they see the two-state kind of process they have between Palestine and Israel as being equivalent to what occurred in apartheid. So in the ANC's last national conference, they were asked on what is their views on foreign relations going forwards, and they said, and I quote, they said that they need to continue to foster relations with Cuba and they need to continue to denounce Israel as an apartheid state. Now, the ANC loves the Cubans, not because the Cubans come up with an ingenious way or a new thing or a new idea on how to do something or fulfill a need. They love the Cubans because the Cubans have infrastructure that is still from the 50s. And what the Cubans are experts in is actually keeping that infrastructure running despite the fact that it's falling apart. So that's why the ANC seems to love these guys, because that means they don't have to fix the infrastructure. They don't have to modernize it. They just have to keep it going. And then that's why they get the Cubans to come over, not because the Cubans are brass box, but they know how to like keep this aged infrastructure on the cards. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, can't see them. I can't see them going. Thanks, Jews. We'll take your help. What do you think?
So I think this all comes down to sort of nationalism, of which we both not a fan of, but in some ways, economic nationalism makes a lot of sense in terms of what is the best thing for our country, irrespective of the global agenda, right? So India and
Mm,
Russia is a good example of this. So India now gets most of it, like up to 10% of its oil from Russia. Before it was 0.2%. They didn't follow with the sanctions on Russia, and India now is reaping the benefits in terms of the petrol price in India is fairly stable. Everywhere else in the world it's been record highs. In India it's been stable because they're getting cheap oil from Russia, not worrying too much about sanctions, but most importantly worrying about their own internal politics and their own internal democratic calm of the country, for lack of a better word. Ideally, more countries should be like that, irrespective of any global
mm,
agenda. So for South Africa, it makes a lot of sense to get the best people in the world who have solved this issue, fix the issue for us in South Africa, or at least attempt to help us with that. But due to bullshit ideology and due to a global anti-Israel agenda, notably from the UN and others, the ANC is quite willing to let people die of thirst or die of diseases associated with undrinkable water rather than allow Israel help us make the good decisions to fix the water infrastructure in South Africa. And, any country that loves itself would solve things, but a country that doesn't love
mm.
itself would happily just make people completely expendable based on the whims and ideology of the ruling party.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of roll it back to that UN thing. The first thing is the UN for me is a giant waste of time, and I would like to see it abolished. Now I'm going to give you a reason for that, and that is, and this is actually something that I became aware of when I read Douglas Murray's new book. So Douglas Murray he did a new book on the death of the West, and he basically in it he describes an event that occurred in Durban with the UN kind of summit on racism, where apparently the Western countries were all denounced by the African leaders at this UN conference, where they said that they were all slave traders and they should all pay reparations. The US walked out of the conference because it was so deeply hostile towards Western nations. At that same conference, they said that apparently they praised China as being the freest nation in the world, and they praised Cuba for its leader, and they gave like almost their own little peace prize to Gaddafi for being such a great guy. And there was all sorts of shenanigans that occurred at the UN. And so, if you look at it from that perspective, the UN is a deeply ideologically captured organization. It is not fit for purpose. The whole reason for it in the first place was to stop countries almost warring against each other
Yeah,
and allowing them a platform in order to be able to come together and resolve their conflicts. But now, rather than resolve conflicts, what they appear to do now is almost to create cliques or gangs, and then they gang up on the outsider, which is obviously what we've seen with places like Russia. Now, that's not for us to say that Russia's justified or unjustified or whatever. That's that we're not commenting on the war. We're just commenting on the facts. So the second thing is that I would like to see the WEF destroyed and obliterated, because the WEF's globalist agenda, Klaus Schwab was very famously as saying, no country should resist the temptation to stand on their own and go against the global order. That's Klaus's words, not mine. And I think that kind of symbolizes what's going wrong here. It's those two things that show us that we have a problem. If South Africa was a good country that only thought about South Africans first, the first thing that they would want to do is they would want to go to the world leaders. So, as an example, Japan had this. When Japan modernized from the Meiji era, where it kind of threw off the shoguns and they had to modernize their country, they went all around the world and they found the world leaders in every kind of area, and they took what they could from that and they modernized their country and they made it very strong. And that strength that they did from it meant that come World War II, the Japanese army was one of the mightiest in the world. So it is possible. Now, if we did that, we would go to the Russians, and we've done videos on this. We would go to the Russians and get the mini nuclear reactors, and we'd say, put them out of sea and power the damn place. And then we'd have electricity for the next 1,000 years. We'd go to Israel and we'd say, give us your water solutions. We'd go to all the different places around the world and we'd get all the best things and we'd modernize our country. But because there's almost a globalist agenda, it's like, well, the globalists say we can't buy Russian oil because of the war. The globalists say we can't get Russian technology because, Russia bad and, West great. We can't go off and we can't get things from Israel because, Israel's is an apartheid state and you don't want to get involved in that. And because there's all these kind of like globalist policies that are going on, it's stopping South Africa look after South Africa first.
Yeah.
But if we were looking after South Africa first, we'd just go, fuck off, guys, us first. We don't give a shit. Just give us what we want.
Exactly, exactly. So that's why, for example, now to solve load shedding, we need like windmills everywhere because the Germans are giving it to us and the Americans are giving it to us, and knowing that we will be encrypting debt to those nations in time to come. Right? I was just in
Correct.
Portugal, 70% renewable energy, highest energy prices in Europe. That is not.
Because it doesn't work.
Right, exactly. It's just inefficient and useless for the most part. So, I mean, in this particular instance, there's
Do you
actually a
know what I
deep.
don't understand on
What?
that energy thing? Just to interrupt you there for 1 second. You can give me your comments on this. You know what I don't understand? China tried this. South Africa loves China. But China actually tried to switch everything to greens and it just didn't work. And they had massive blackouts. So they were like, sod this green shit, doesn't work. And they just restarted up like how many coal power stations?
Yeah,
So
thousands.
how come as a country that loves the Chinese so much, how come we don't follow that? Like you tell me.
Who knows? But what we do know is that the ANC itself and its alliance partners are deeply, I would argue, anti Semitic. They don't like Jews, they don't like Israel, and they would prefer to let South Africans suffer rather than let Israel solve a very pertinent and important problem. And then they can justify it with the UN Human Rights Council, which is controlled by Saudi Arabia and Syria, because those are the paragons of human rights societies in the world, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, basically, we are quite happy to let children die of bilharzia rather than let Israel solve a very important problem. And which makes the ANC deeply unpatriotic, which makes the ANC deeply complicit, and most importantly, it makes South Africa a sort of just a waste of a country for the most part for any sort of global agenda at best. So yeah, there you go. I mean, that's essentially the story right now. In our personal opinions, we should be far more nationalistic. We should bring the best people from anywhere, irrespective of where they are, to fix the problems that the ANC has created, and therefore we can actually go somewhere as a particular country. But if we refuse to do that, the poor suffer and no one really cares.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. I just sometimes kind of I don't really understand it, should we say? It's like I said, the UN they do some really crazy things, huh? Like where they appoint to somebody from Afghanistan to the Women's Council because women's rights in Afghanistan are super free, and they'll sit there and just go around the world and basically just stir up shit everywhere, and it's just a giant waste of space. But we'll follow their agenda. Like
Yeah.
why? Then you got people telling you, well, I have a different take on that Russian oil thing than you, and that is even if we did buy it, man, where are we going to refine it? Like all the
No, that's true.
refineries in South Africa are fucked anyway.
No,
So
that's all true. That's all true. Don't get me wrong. I know that. That's all true. But once again,
I don't know, man.
if the ANC loved South Africa, those things wouldn't have gone to the shit. But it's just the quality and caliber of ANC cadres, I'm afraid to say. But on that note, my friend, any last comments from you?
No, not really. I think that the only thing I would end on is just by saying like what you see even with the green agenda is why are we going down that route? That's because the Western worlds are offering South Africa free shit, and it's amazing for as long as we've been around. Like Africa always has this mentality of please give me some more, and it's like Africa don't need them. It's got a lot of money, it's got a lot of experience, it's got a lot of wealth. It doesn't need that, but the politicians do because they're so busy stealing the cash that there's nothing left for the actual infrastructure.
Yeah.
So if you look at why we follow in the green agendas, because they're giving us free shit. I do have the question of if Israel said, "Yeah, have some free shit and we'll fix all your water," they'd probably be like, "Ah, okay, cool." Like,
No,
the
they would
fact
still
is, I
say
doubt
no.
they're going to do that.
They would still say no. They would still
You
say
reckon?
no. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
And on that note, Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for the ANC, it stopped taking us for a. Thank you,
Thanks,
Nelson.
Nelson.
Have a lovely day, everyone. See you in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.